Chapter 1, Democratic Politics. What is democracy? Why democracy? In this chapter, we are going to discuss what is democracy, what are its features. We are going to discuss this step by step to find out the meaning of the terms involved in this definition. The aim here is to understand clearly minimum features of a democratic form of government. As we know, democracy is the most popular form of government in the world today. But why is it so? What makes it better than other forms of government? We are going to discuss these questions in this video. First, what is democracy? There may be different types of government in the world, such as anarchy, monarchy, dictatorship, oligarchy, junta, democracy. The best type of government is considered as democracy. And democracy may have two categories: direct democracy and representative or indirect democracy. Just think, what kind of government do we have in India? Direct democracy or representative democracy? Before going in detail, first we should know the definition of democracy, and for that we shall discuss various examples. Question arises, why do we need to define the term? Because democracy is a vast term. We need some features in a country, in a government, then that can be categorized as a democracy. So we shall take some examples and then we are going to discuss some basic features of democracy. If we are going to get simple definition, then one simple factor common to all democracies is that the government is chosen by the people. In simple terms, democracy is a form of government in which the rulers are elected by the people. This statement gives us a simple definition of democracy. This definition allows us to define governments as democratic or non-democratic. For example, earlier in Myanmar, army rulers were not elected by the people. Similarly, one example is of one dictator in Chile named as Pinochet. He was also not elected by the people. One current example is the kings of Saudi Arabia. They are monarchy. They are not directly elected by the people. So that is also not democratic. We should remember that every government in modern world wants to be defined as a democracy, even if it is not so. That is why we need to distinguish carefully between a government that is a democracy and one that is not democracy. Here we have some basic features of democracy. Number one, rulers are elected by the people and they take all the major decisions. Number two, elections offer a choice and opportunity to the people to change the current rulers or government. Number third, this choice and opportunity is available to all the people on an equal basis. Number 4, the exercise of this choice leads to a government limited by basic rules of the constitution and citizens' rights. These are some basic features of democracy, and we are going to discuss all these in details by giving some examples from other parts of the world. First, major decision by elected leaders. Here we are going to discuss one example from Pakistan. In Pakistan, General Pervez Musharraf led a military coup in October 1999. He overthrew a democratically elected government and declared himself the chief executive of the country. After some time, he changed his designation to president and in 2002 held a referendum in the country that granted him a 5-year extension. In 2002, the Constitution of Pakistan was amended and the president was given the power to dismiss the national and provincial assemblies. After passing this law, elections were conducted to the national and provincial assemblies. Hence, Pakistan has had elections, elected representatives with some powers, but the final power rested with military officers and General Pervez Musharraf himself. Therefore, there are many reasons, although there were elections, although there was a, you can say, an elected government, but still Pakistan was under General Pervez Musharraf and it should not be called a democracy. It was because so that the elected government cannot take the final decisions. The power to take final decisions was rested with army officials and with General Musharraf, and none of them were elected by the people. So, this gives us the first feature of democracy. In a democracy, the final decision making power must rest with those elected by the people. Second point, free and fair electoral competition. Here we are going to take example from China. In China, elections are regularly held after every 5 years for electing the country's parliament, called as National People's Congress. This National People's Congress has the power to appoint the president of the country. This has nearly 3,000 members elected from all over China. Some members are elected by the army. But before contesting elections, a candidate needs the approval of the Chinese Communist Party, and only members of Chinese Communist Party or its smaller parties allied to it were allowed to contest elections, and the government is always formed by the Communist Party. We have another example from Mexico. Mexico became independent in 1930. Since then, most of the time, only one party was ruling over Mexico, PRI, Institutional Revolutionary Party. Elections are held after every 6 years, but with various methods and tricks, PRI used to win elections every time. After discussing these two examples, we can add a second feature of democracy, that a democracy must be based on a free and fair election where those currently in power have a fair chance of losing. Third main feature of democracy: one person, one vote, one value. It is also called universal adult franchise. And this principle has now come to be accepted almost all over the world. But still, we are having so many examples where there is no such rule like one person, one vote, one value. First example, Saudi Arabia. Until 2015, in Saudi Arabia, women did not have the right to vote. In Estonia, they have made its citizenship rules in such a way that people belonging to Russian minority find it difficult to get the right to vote. In Fiji, the electoral system is such that the vote of an local Fijian has more value than that of an Indian Fijian. So we have third feature of democracy, that in a democracy each adult citizen must have one vote and each vote must have one value. Next, rule of law and respect for rights. Here we have example of Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe attained independence from white minority rule in 1980. Since then, the country has been ruled by only one party, ZANU-PF, the party that led the freedom struggle. Its leader, Robert Mugabe, ruled the country since independence. Elections were held regularly and always won by ZANU-PF. President Mugabe used so many unfair practices to win elections. Opposition parties, workers were harassed and their meetings disrupted. Public protests and demonstrations against the government were declared illegal. Finally, he was forced out of office in 2017. The example of Zimbabwe gives us one idea that a democratic government cannot do whatever it likes simply because it has won an election. It has to respect some basic rules. So here we have fourth feature of democracy, that is a democratic government rules within limits set by constitutional law and citizens' rights. So here once again we are going to revise all these features. You can see here all these features again. Number one, rulers elected by the people take all the major decisions. Number two, elections offer a choice and fair opportunity to the people to change the current rulers. This choice and opportunity is available to all the people on an equal basis, and the exercise of this choice leads to a government limited by basic rules of the constitution and citizens' rights. We shall continue the topic in next video. Subscribe the channel www.youtube.com/ramsharmalive. You can also register on www.freeteach.in.